Welcome back to another episode of Healthcare Horrors. My name is Ashley. I'm a brand specialist here at Atlas MedStaff.
And I'm Alicia Carosella, a training and development specialist here.
And I am Dolan on the knobs.
He's excited for that.
I'm excited to be
He's all
back.
hopped up on Red Bull.
And vodka.
Is that what's in there?
No.
That's why it's in a glass and not in the can.
That adds up.
I also wasn't expecting that to be that color.
No.
Looks like Strawberry Crush.
It is strawberry apricot.
Oh.
Apricot.
Yeah, I was expecting orange too. It's full of surprises.
Is it apricot or is it apricot?
I don't know. You can go both.
It's a pretty good Red Bull, though. If you're into Red Bull. It's my vice. I'm probably going to die from
You know
something.
what else was good? The prickly pear Arizona mule we made the other day with jalapeno infused tequila or vodka.
Oh, that sounds delicious.
It was pretty tasty.
Tipsy Recruiter. Check
I
it out.
did not get that call.
No, I just want to drink the drink.
Well, we would have had every ingredient right here in this room if someone didn't take the tequila home.
Who took the tequila home? Ashley.
But there was like a shot and a half left for one more drink. It was my mason jar, so
You put tequila in her mason jar, it's her tequila, I guess.
mean,
That's
we
fair.
we
If
have
you just
all,
start putting the things in your own container, then they're yours.
Yeah.
we have all the ingredients to make it. We just don't have the jalapenos.
So we don't have all the ingredients.
But that one thing, come on, you guys.
So yeah, check it out. Tipsy Recruiter. It's on the Atlas MedStaff Facebook, YouTubes, all the fun things. that you can-
YouTubes?
Yeah, YouTubes. Come on.
But hey, who else is joining us today? Who's back?
Back
Guess who's
again.
back?
Again. Eric's
Staff
back.
is back.
Back again. And I'm a recruiter.
We did let him out of the studio this time.
Yeah, we
did.
didn't lock him in. So
Finally just got out a couple days ago.
He got out and
Showered,
went to
came right back
Colorado.
there you go.
We let him even go on vacation.
And I'm
There
back.
he is.
Welcome back.
Didn't you get to hang out with one of your travel nurses while you were there?
I did.
At a gas station?
I did, and it was
Explain.
awesome.
What?
So he works in Gunnison, which is like 9 miles south of Crested Butte. So on my way back, because he actually had to work the whole time I was up there, we were going to go snowboarding, but it didn't work out. But so he's working nights, and we met up at this gas station. It's called Power Stop. Best gas station I've ever been to.
Better than Buc-ee's?
Way better.
Wow.
Full bar.
That's
like
some strong... Oh, okay.
full like breakfast menu, like massive menu. So you can actually like order your drink, and a lot of it was Red Bull based
Really?
or like Monsters. So like you just go get the Monster like in the convenient whatever store part. And we hung out there for like 3 hours.
Nice.
I'm looking at pictures of this
Is the
place.
restaurant like based around breakfast? Like the gas station
Yeah.
Yeah,
restaurant?
they make
Kinda,
some
yeah.
good-looking muffins.
Yeah, I mean
Hell
it was
yeah.
like really cool. Like I would definitely go back there.
And they
It's my-
have energy drinks mainly for the morning.
seemed that way.
Okay.
I was drinking beer.
It appears
In the
there's
morning.
an arcade
Yeah,
in here.
with like 3 travelers. It was,
Nice.
yeah, it was good.
Was
That's
there
very
an
cool.
arcade as well? She said there's an arcade.
I'm looking at the pictures online.
There was a lot going on there.
Wow.
There's a lot of games here in the
Is
back.
it a truck stop or is it a gas
It says
station?
the coolest gas station bar restaurant ever.
What?
I would agree.
Wow. Okay. Well, if you're in... Where is it at?
Gunnison,
Gunnison,
Gunnison.
Colorado. Check it out.
Power Stop.
Power Stop.
Interesting.
It is a power stop. It goes with the name.
There really
It
is a lot
was a
going on
power
in
stop.
here.
So who did we talk about last week?
I'm so glad you asked, Dolan. Way to keep us on track. Last time we talked about Richard Angelo, and he was at Good Samaritan Hospital in New York.
Dang.
But he was not a Good Samaritan. He thought he was, but he was not.
He thought he was doing good work.
He just wanted to do the good, but no.
Yeah, so go check out that last episode if you haven't seen it.
Yes.
Or seen it, heard it.
Heard it.
Yeah.
But today we are talking about Nurse Mildred Ratched,
Oh.
aka the Big Nurse. So,
Is that what they call her?
Mm-hmm.
The
Why
big
did I
nurse?
ever-
The Big Nurse.
Huh.
She's
Hear
head
that.
nurse. And
That's
she's
a-
a force to be reckoned with.
That's what I call my girlfriend too.
The
Nurse
big
Ratched.
nurse.
Oh, Nurse Ratched?
Yeah,
Okay.
she is a nurse.
Oh,
Is she a travel nurse?
How
Does
did
she
you
wanna
meet
be?
her, Eric?
She's not. She's a case manager.
okay.
They can travel.
I met her through an ex-girlfriend.
Oh.
Nice.
So things seem to be going well for you.
The universe works in
Can't
crazy ways,
Can't
man.
complain.
There you go.
Very good.
Cool.
Okay, well, before we get into her history, Nurse Ratched, Mildred Ratched, was born on April 1st, 1918, which makes her an Aries, respected, ambitious, confident, and sometimes aggressive.
We don't know a lot about Mildred's family other than she did have a brother, and they were both sent to an orphanage, and at the orphanage they were separated.
So then they spent some time in foster care, in the foster care system.
So once World War, she stayed in foster care basically her whole life, and then World War II came into play, where she ended up serving as an army nurse. So after graduating from a 6-month training course and becoming an army nurse, she was stationed at an army hospital in Fort Stutzenberg in the Philippines.
So while she was stationed at Fort Stutzenberg in the Philippines, she was caring for patients sort of as an alleged angel of mercy or angel of death. So the soldiers who were badly burned or, were amputees, were just begging to be put out of their misery, she would suffocate them, allegedly. And so the general found out and said, they wanted to court-martial her, but they couldn't prove that she was doing it. So he said, get the F off my island and get the F out of my army. And so she did. And then she ends up continuing her nursing career at a psych hospital in Salem, Oregon.
So one of 12 patients at army hospitals ended up getting admitted for psychiatric care. So this was Army Nurse Mildred Ratched's kind of segue into psychiatric care. So after being discharged, she returned to her hometown in Oregon, where she continued her career as a psychiatric nurse. And at this point in time, we've talked about this in past episodes, where mental institutions are just kind of all over the place, and they don't just house the mentally ill, criminals, poor people, older people, just
Sad people,
society's outcasts,
people who like people of the same gender.
Yes.
Basically anything that society deems not appropriate. So not necessarily for true psychiatric patients, although there were some of those as well.
Yep, they were all sent to these mental institutions. So eventually, Mildred does begin work at Salem, Oregon State Hospital as a nurse. She is very soft-spoken. She's always been a soft-spoken, has a calm composure about her, perfect skin. Just everything is always kept perfect.
And tidy, very neat.
Like OCD neat?
Yes, perfect hair, perfect makeup, everything is centered. Everything about her is crisp, clean.
I wonder if that has anything to do with the army.
Maybe.
Yeah, that would make sense. Her uniform was always tight and pristine and starched so stiff that there were no creases. There was never a thread out of place, and it hugged her curves. And she also had a 1940s hairstyle that she just never seemed to grow out of as we move forward. And she wore heels. I don't know how she could wear heels
every day. But I think most nurses wore heels back then, which is just mean because they're really on their feet for a long time.
It's crazy.
You can't even tennis shoes all day.
Okay, so when she started at Salem Oregon State Hospital. There wasn't much organization to the facility. Again, this place was most likely a little overcrowded. And so Mildred took it upon herself to bring order to the chaos, and she quickly moved up into becoming the head nurse, aka the big nurse, is what people called her. Mm-hmm. She was a powerful force to be reckoned with, and everyone respected her. And if patients were unruly or lacked respect, she would definitely make them respect her.
But she wasn't very reactive. She was very calm and calculated,
Manipulative.
cold. Yeah, definitely that.
Shaming.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, she didn't show much emotion at all. But yeah, there was definitely like an eeriness about her. If any patients were too much to handle, she would order that they undergo certain treatments such as electroshock therapy, lobotomies, hot baths, whatever.
The hydrotherapy, which is a really hot bath, so like 119 degrees just before it can scald your skin, and then into a cold ice bath for 5 minutes.
Did she just order patients receive these therapies, or did she do them herself?
She did them herself.
Here and there? Mm-hmm. All right. So not only did she gain power or respect through ordering those kinds of treatments to the patients, but she would break down, dehumanize, and manipulate patients by using their demons against them. So for example, in like group therapy sessions, she would make the patients reveal their flaws, secrets, or reasons for being in that facility. So she would basically just get these patients confidential.
She essentially, expose their weaknesses, their things in their past.
Oh, really?
And then use it against them.
Yes.
So she always had the upper hand.
Yeah.
She would use it to manipulate them to get them to do things like kill themselves.
Yeah, she would do that as well. So yeah, we don't have a lot of like specifics of all of these patients and who she might have killed or who she victimized, but so she was also friends with a facility supervisor who was also an Army nurse and served with Ratched. They kind of viewed her as a twisted maternal figure at the facility too. So at first, to some patients, she maybe had more of a motherly presence. And some doctors or admin staff would like refer to her as Mother Ratched. That was kind of another weird nickname. But even some of the staff feared her. Like there was just definitely like a cloud over her, like a weird vibe, if you will. So some patients were also used as pawns in her sick little games. She would allow senior patients who have been there for a while to basically harass newer patients as kind of initiation. I don't know.
Hazing?
Yeah, I kind of thought of hazing as well. And it was kind of sick because it would, go to harassment or even like sexual harassment, and she would just allow it or just turn her head and let things happen.
Which is odd because she's so stern everywhere else.
Yeah. I don't know. She was sick in the head. Like she had this calm, perfect composure about her, but yeah, she would break down anyone in any way she could. Back then, smoking cigarettes was also allowed in facilities, so she would withhold cigarettes or just anything for that matter from patients just to continue to gain power over them. So cigarettes, food, any sort of money or earnings, she would hold those from her patients just to express power.
So from the outside perspective, it looked like she had full control.
Mm-hmm. Over the whole facility.
She was the final word.
Yeah, even over the doctor that was there. Like the doctor even feared her. She was definitely the head honcho of this place.
Everything she was doing was a means to an end for her to get what she wanted. It had to suit her. it didn't seem like she was doing it just for fun. Like there was always a reason, like a means to an end, to get to her next thing that she wanted.
And she definitely had some sort of personality disorder, like a dissociative
maybe
personality type situation.
Probably some trauma that happened in her childhood.
Yeah, that would make sense too. Being abandoned. So yeah, it didn't really appear like she got pleasure out of what she was doing, but I mean, I would assume most certainly did, just being manipulative. And
I think that she thought what she was doing was justified, though.
Yeah, like you said, she always had a reason for it, and no one ever questioned her. So finally, there was one patient, an ex-criminal at the facility that did not succumb to Nurse Ratched's authority in mind games. This patient's name was Randall McMurphy, and he eventually ended up receiving multiple electric shock therapy sessions, which he would often snap back from. So like you said earlier, she would even kind of manipulate patients into committing suicide. So there was a patient that was driven crazy enough, committed suicide, and this just caused McMurphy to snap, and he attempted to kill Nurse Ratched for her lack of compassion, and he tried choking her but was stopped. So Mildred Ratched survived barely. She had permanent damage to her vocal cords for the rest of her life. Once she returned to work, she tried her best to keep her perfect composure and uniform, with the addition of a neck bandage covering the bruises. She also couldn't talk any more than a whisper, so she had to communicate by writing. The patient, McMurphy, who choked her, was of course ordered to undergo a lobotomy that led him to being in a vegetative state, which then led to his death. Nurse Ratched continued her duties at the state hospital as a highly regarded psychiatric nurse, and she eventually just keeps doing the awful things she's doing and eventually does retire to Mexico.
And nobody ever sees her again.
That's it? She goes to Mexico and then she's gone?
Yeah.
Just like Shawshank Redemption.
That's it.
Nope.
She just decides she's tired of it and she leaves, gets in a car, and goes to Mexico.
So with all this, she wasn't ever even caught. She wasn't even caught? Why are you guys laughing?
No, she wasn't caught because she went to Mexico and nobody ever saw her again.
But so how do you know so she went to Mexico? I'm just like,
this is great.
You can't just go somewhere and
you
then...
You can just go to Mexico.
I've been there.
You just don't come back.
And then you just don't... But how do you know she went to Mexico then?
Because that's where she was last seen headed toward.
In Mexico.
Do you know why she just goes to Mexico, Dolan? Do you know the very important piece of information we're about to tell you?
She found her
She
real
found
parents.
her what? No. What are you talking?
What did you say?
She found her real parents.
She
They
found
put
her
in a
real
foster care.
parents.
And her brother.
All right. I
And
mean,
then
that's
they lived in Mexico happily ever
the
after.
wildest story I've ever heard. Like, how does this person just get away with all that? Go to Mexico? They know she went to Mexico, but then she never got caught. There's no resolution. She just goes to Mexico.
I don't think
Okay.
Mexico had an extraction treaty at the time.
All right,
It
we're
was a long
dragging this
time
on
ago.
way too long, Alicia.
No, this is good. I like this. All right, do you want to tell them? Okay.
April Fools.
Don't not. appreciate
Apparently,
that.
I did not know that this was an April Fool's episode.
Dude, I
We
talked about
told
this
you.
in our meeting.
You just don't listen.
I want to walk out. Can I walk out of this interview?
No, we're just getting started.
What is happening?
And
This whole thing is April. I'm gonna
it's
take
a
a
good thing
drink.
you poured the vodka because you need it today.
What?
That's why.
I mean, like, okay, so, all right. Let me just breathe for a second.
Do you want to? Can I go into the creation of Nurse Ratched, the fictional character?
Yeah,
or is it too
So
early?
you guys didn't make Nurse Ratched up?
No.
Okay.
It's a whole TV series and a book.
Oh, this whole time I'm like, you guys put a really good story together. Like, you guys did this over lunch. You guys went for context for people who are listening. For context, Ashley and Alicia, did you go to lunch too?
I did not.
He didn't.
So you two went to lunch. Ashley and Alicia went to lunch, and you guys come back and you're like, yeah, let's record this episode. In my mind, this entire time, Ashley goes, yeah, we're going to go to lunch and make sure our notes match. I'm like,
That's
okay,
when you
yeah,
first said
cool,
that.
you know? And then you come back, and then I'm like, so you guys wrote this whole thing, but
No. That would
Okay.
be fun, though, if we did.
there were some things where I was like, wait, that doesn't make sense, but okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's when you're gonna have to
You couldn't tell that we were having a hard time lying.
cut
to
some
you?
things and make them.
Well, I just thought you guys were struggling. I don't know. That's why I thought you had to have a lunch to make sure everything.
Because the book and the TV series are very different. That's why we had to make sure our notes lined up and what we were going to say because they're not the same.
For the people who don't have context, let's let Eric explain,
please,
what's happening right now.
What Nurse Ratched is. I should have known it. Nurse Ratched.
Have you ever heard of the book One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest? Jack Nicholson.
I think I see a cover in my head, but I don't know if it's the right book.
So that is Nurse Ratched was in that book.
Okay.
So Ken Casey, who's a really interesting character himself.
But he wasn't a character; he was the author.
Right. Okay. So
Okay.
he actually. So at the time, I think he was at University of Oregon. He was like an incredible wrestler. He almost made the Olympics, but he was in like a writing program. And so I think maybe like 2 years out of college, he started writing this book because he actually worked in a mental institute.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, like he had got involved in these CIA-backed like drug experiments. MK Ultra. I don't know if you're
So that
familiar with
explains
MK Ultra, but he would be working at the hospital on acid or psilocybin because he'd get paid to do it. So I don't know if they were paying for his school or these writing workshops or what. So he'd be at the hospital, but there was an inspiration there for the character Nurse Ratched.
Explains the baths.
And
right?
he felt that, you know, a lot of these people didn't belong there and that they weren't listened to.
Mm-hmm.
And just, you know, like the abusive practices, you know, like lobotomies and, you know, electroshock therapies. Like he felt that these were not, you know, needed at all. So that was the inspiration for the book. Now, so Ken Casey's an interesting guy. All right. So
Yeah.
not only did, you know, he obviously got famous. He wrote this book. It got turned into a movie. Jack Nicholson was in the movie. Nurse Ratched, actually, the nurse that played her, I think her name was Louise Fletcher.
Yep, you
She
got it.
actually won an Academy Award for a role.
Wow.
I think it was like a Broadway play.
Yeah,
as
before
well.
it was a movie, it was a Broadway play, and Joan Tetzel played Nurse Ratched, and then, Louise Fletcher. And then there's also the Netflix series where Sarah Paulson plays Nurse Ratched, but the book and the show Ratched are
different.
so different. So we were like kind of trying to mesh them together a little bit.
So there was some creative process here.
And there are definitely some things
Yes.
we made up as well.
Like going to Mexico
No, she did do that
She
in
did
the
that.
in the series.
in the series, but not the book.
Right.
So what happened in the book? Now I'm curious. Or are we going to leave it up to our
Well-
listeners to read it?
A lot of that stuff was from the book.
Okay.
Can I kind of go on with just...
Yeah, I don't know much about Ken
Yeah.
Casey,
It's
so
super,
by all
it's
means.
super interesting.
Yeah.
So he writes this book. almost made the Olympics for wrestling. Then I think he got a shoulder injury. So after he wrote the book, he moves to La Honda, California, where he's at, I think, like some old colleagues from Stanford, because I think he got some scholarships to write and do all that. So he starts hanging out with these other literary figures. So they're not really like the Beat generation. Like, he's too old for that, but he's like too young to be a hippie. So he starts hanging out with like the Merry Pranksters. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of them. And they'd have these parties called the Acid Tests. He's hanging out with the Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
So he was married, and then he had a child with another lady who was actually Jerry Garcia, head of the Grateful Dead's. Jerry Garcia was her stepdad. Her name was Sunshine.
What?
Yeah, and so him and Jerry Garcia were good friends. They hung out. And then, have you guys ever heard of the Kool-Aid Acid Test by Tom Wolfe?
Mm-hmm.
Like, he also wrote, like, Bonfire of the Vanities. Great book as well. So Tom Wolfe wrote this whole book about, like, Ken Casey and, like, the Grateful Dead. And, like, Hunter S. Thompson also wrote a book where Ken Casey was involved. And, gosh, I forgot the name of that book, but I've read it. But Ken Casey became this, like, huge cultural, like, icon. And I think he maybe wrote a couple books after that, but mostly he would just do articles for, like, Rolling Stone and, you know, these other popular, like, kind of counterculture magazines. But kind of like, his life story is crazy. He had his son was also a wrestler who actually died on the way to, like, a competition on a bus during a storm, and I think it kind of messed him up. But yeah, he was hanging out with, like, the Merry Pranksters, the Grateful Dead, and he had books written about him. So just kind of a cool side note.
Yeah,
And
I didn't know all that
I
about
didn't know
him.
that. That's cool. I didn't know about any of this, apparently.
yeah,
Jeez.
Dolan, in our team meeting, I was like, Alicia and I are going to compare notes.
Look,
because we're talking
Also,
about
it
Nurse
was in our
Ratched.
chat.
my role in this podcast is to record and be amazed by the
It's
information
okay.
you guys put
I just
forward.
want you to know that we did include you, and then you didn't retain.
I'm actually
I
kind of
didn't
glad
retain.
you had
Which
the
is okay.
reaction you did.
Yeah.
I'm still kind of shook.
Well, the TV show is so much different than the book because there's this whole storyline with her brother that's involved, and that's kind of like her motivator for doing all of these things, because he's being held as like the prisoner in the psych ward because they're trying to get him fit to stand trial so they can put him in the electric chair and all this stuff. So
well, and it helps that so there's a whole TV series on this, I guess. To explain even further, my form of entertainment is podcast about space and food TV and dumb cartoons. So
it's okay. I've been listening to a lot of books too, and I had to push myself to get through the
to get
show.
through it.
Like it's good. It's just like I just haven't been watching all of TV.
I haven't even heard of the show. Like, I haven't even heard of
Ratched.
Yeah, Ratched
good.
or
It is
any
pretty
of this.
good.
So, yeah.
it's scary.
But Sarah Paulson in anything though is
She's
great.
so good. Yeah, over the weekend I was listening to the audiobook One Who Flew the Cuckoo's Nest.
She was listening to the audiobook over the weekend. I'm watching Nurse Ratched. Like
How
whole thing.
like how long did it take for you to binge? Is it like you said? It's a series, right?
I think there's 8 hour-long episodes throughout the weekend.
Okay.
I finished it yesterday because
Yeah.
I was just, sorry to interrupt. I was just checking my notes too. Some other people that Ken Casey was hanging out with was like Jack Kerouac, Allen Ginsberg, and Timothy Leary too. So powerful. I mean, the book is like very, very powerful, and that's why Nurse Ratched is like so well known. And the book is really about individuality and like the ability to like retain your individuality,
in a place
no
like
matter
that.
the circumstances. And I think in a lot of ways, like we were talking about before, like her, like, military background.
Sure.
And I mean, he was like, Ken Casey was definitely anti-war, as a lot of people were at those times, but those are crazy times.
That's interesting. I kind of want to read that. Retaining your individuality. I think everybody can struggle with that a little bit.
It's tough. I mean, whether you're in the military or you
Definitely
have a job,
in the military.
any sort of organization, like you two are in bands. That's cool. Like, it's a way to express yourself, like, outside of work.
Yeah.
When I think a lot of people kind of struggle with that.
I think
I should
so.
start a band. I think is what I get out of that.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of it too is it's just think about the social settings that you're in, right? There is a work version of yourself. There is a home version of yourself. There is a spouse version of yourself. There is a
Happy hour
version of yourself. There is a Atlas Med staff meet and greet version of yourself.
Yes, there really is. You put on a lot of different
and
hats.
how do you retain your originality through all of those different settings? I mean, especially for myself, like, I am a definite chameleon. Like, I get it just depending on the group of people I'm around. Sometimes I'll leave and I'll be like, I don't think I would think that's funny any other time except for around these people or, in this social setting or whatever. So that's interesting. What's the book called again?
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I'll check that out.
And it's really good. Movie's good.
Yeah.
And I think one other thing too, and it's brought up a lot more nowadays, is just mental health. And how that's looked upon in society. I mean, back then in the 60s, like you guys were talking about earlier, it's like all sorts of people would end up in there that probably shouldn't have been there. And
Definitely not.
they're lobotomizing people they didn't have, which is still done today, I think. Obviously it's a little more scientific.
We've talked about this.
Yeah, there's somewhere where, or is it electroshock therapy? Something is
I know
still,
we had recruiter and nurse Jasmine Troupe.
Yep, we talked about this.
She talked about how when she was becoming a nurse and she like toured a facility or whatever, and they were still practicing electroshock therapy.
Yeah, so lobotomies are no longer performed.
Yeah, lobotomies are done for.
But the electroshock therapy, she said that when she was just doing her rotations that she saw that.
Yeah, definitely no more lobotomies. That's well, we did somebody who I can't remember
Walter
who it was.
Freeman.
Walter Freeman, yeah, and then he turned it into like a show more than it was a medical practice.
The ice
It's
pick
like
lobotomy.
My worst nightmare, like my biggest fear is like ending up in like a 1940s psych hospital.
Yeah, nuts.
Gross. Yeah, the book was
Good thing
written
it's
in
2023.
Yeah, we were just talking at lunch though. We feel like the whole world is starting to go backwards in a way. But that's a completely different topic. We don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But yeah, the book, the one who flew the cuckoo's nest.
One Flew Over the
Cuckoo's Nest was written in 1962, and Nurse Ratched was a fictional character who was based off of a real character that Ken Casey did work with. So
that's all really cool.
This was Eric's idea. I was like, who should we do a healthcare horrors episode on? And he said Nurse Ratched. And I was like, well, she's not real.
And it comes out on April 1st, Dolan.
Oh.
And her birthday was April 1st. I was leading you along the whole way.
Dang.
Aries. Yep.
Dang.
Gotta pay attention.
Yeah, apparently.
So some of this stuff we did create.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Does that make you happier?
I'm actually excited now. I kind of like that I didn't pay attention in a way because
you were like, I
you
want
guys
to
did a
leave
good
the
job.
room.
Can I just give you a hand here?
We lied. Yay. No.
Nice.
Dolan and I have talked about this before. He's like, you are not a good liar. I'm like, I know.
You got me this time. Got me this time. Well,
it was all in good fun.
I was wondering, I'm like, that's it? In the very beginning that she was born? That's like, I thought we went through this last episode.
I'm going to go on a little tangent here.
Okay.
Yes, what you got?
So even though Nurse Ratched is a fictional character,
Sure.
like, there was people working in facilities like that were way worse.
Yeah.
And, you know, this is coming off, you know, like World War II ending and the Nazis, and the U.S. brought over a lot of Nazis.
Yep.
In a program called Operation Paperclip. So like they helped with like NASA and building, you know, weapon systems, so on and so forth. But there was a lot of these people, you know, living in the U.S. under, you know, different
names,
different identities.
Aliases, yeah.
Well,
And
I mean, there's a reason why we know so many things medically that came from the Nazi doctors and the Nazi, like, I guess,
Just war criminals in general.
Yeah, right. And then of course we covered Shiroishi, that the Japanese Imperial Army, where it was the exact same thing because they were funded by the Nazis, right? So it's there's a reason why we know what a baby looks like every month in the womb, or
I think of that every time.
and it's super disgusting and gross. But I shouldn't even say but
Yeah.
it's why we know these things now, and it's wild.
yeah,
It
and
is
like
really wild.
and like Ken Casey getting paid to do, you know, like be on acid to like supplement his income. But there was a lot of people in jail, and they were doing this program with them too. So another guy, Whitey Bulger. So that's a crazy story. So Whitey Bulger, I think he started because he was from Boston, and I think he started robbing banks like in the 30s or 40s in like Indiana.
All right.
And then he ended up in jail in Georgia. And to cut down his time, he's like, okay, like you can do these like acid tests on me. Like Whitey Bulger didn't drink, he didn't do drugs, but he's trying to cut down his time. Whatever, they cut down his time. He gets out. This guy cannot stay out of trouble to save his life. Then he gets sent to Alcatraz. And they're like, hey, like, we've got the test here. Like, you've already done it. Will you do it again? He did it. Cuts down his time. He gets out. And then, like, you know, the whole Whitey Bulger story.
Yeah.
Which is actually, that's like a whole nother crazy story because his brother was, like, the highest political figure in Massachusetts, got him out of a ton of trouble. His neighbor was younger, was getting beat up one time, and Whitey Bulger like broke up the fight or like beat up these guys that have attacked him. That guy ends up becoming the head of the FBI in Boston to take down the Italian mob. So Whitey Bulger was actually like he could do whatever he want for the Irish mob. He was a rat.
Wow.
And his brother protected him, and this FBI guy protected him. So there's movies and books about that. Like The Departed is kind of based on Whitey Bulger.
No.
There was that Johnny
Kinda
Depp
crazy
movie
how
that
this
came
all
out. So
this-
like this was going on in the U.S. You
Yeah.
know, it's like they're doing all these tests and doing all this stuff, government funded.
Yeah, makes
I don't
sense.
know. Mental health. It's you know, I don't know. It's just kind of a, like you said earlier. It's just like crazy kind of circle of how we've come to this point. I guess a lot of bad stuff added up to actually make strides in mental health. I have no idea.
So
what
in
I'm
a way,
talking
you'd
about
say
right now.
Nurse Ratched is just like a cleaner version of what actually went on.
Honestly, yeah, kind of.
Probably.
So wild. Who are we doing next week?
Mayuki Ishikawa.
Yes.
Back to Japan.
Back to Japan.
Wow.
And
Still
to
sticking-
to the Aquarius.
Yes.
Ah.
Still kind of
Unfortunately,
sticking around
more
the
people
World
like
War
us.
II.
Dang it, Dolan. All right.
Cool. Well, thank you, Eric, for joining us.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for helping us.
Let us
pull
know
the
if you get
wool over
some-
Dolan's eyes.
Yeah.
Anything to mess with Dawn. I'm
There we
in.
go. Thank you guys.
That we didn't know it'd be so easy.
Oh, this is fun.
Happy April Fools.
Yes, happy April Fools.
Murder.
Murder.
Thank you for listening to Healthcare Horrors, brought to you by Atlas MedStaff. Just a reminder, we are not healthcare professionals. We are just fans of true crime, talking about some of history's darkest moments in healthcare. Stay tuned, stay healthy, and stay safe. Healthcare horrors.
Murder.